Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're trying to find, well, maybe the ultimate shortcut to expressing yourself powerfully, persuasively. We are diving into something that's really personal, but actually surprisingly tough to put into words. Your deepest dreams, your biggest goals.
Yeah, it's that feeling, isn't it? You've got this huge vision inside.
All right.
A professional ambition, maybe a creative project, a whole life plan.
And then you try to explain it.
And it just falls flat. Comes out sounding, I don't know, small, inadequate.
Totally. It feels like it doesn't capture the weight of it all.
Exactly. And it's more than just, say, a language barrier. If you're learning one, it feels like a failure to connect that deep internal commitment you have to the actual words you're using out loud.
Yeah.
For anyone learning, or frankly, anyone just swimming in information these days, trying to voice a core ambition can feel like trying to paint this grand masterpiece with only 3 basic colors.
That's a great analogy. The result just doesn't match the vision.
Not at all. It fails to capture the scale or how much it truly means to you.
Precisely. So the sources we're looking at for this deep dive, they really focus on giving you the specific linguistic tools,
Right.
and also the psychological frameworks you need to talk about these aspirations clearly, confidently, and this is key, authentically.
Authenticity is huge.
Our mission here really is to help you move beyond just saying, I wish or I want.
Yeah.
We want to give you the language that actually communicates that deep-seated commitment.
Yeah.
The language that signals to whoever you're talking to that this really matters.
Yeah.
These are high stakes for you.
And what we've got here is essentially a strategic breakdown. It covers both the vocabulary and the mindset techniques.
Okay.
And these are designed to turn those maybe fleeting hopes into real, actionable plans, things you can actually track.
Actionable is the key word there.
Definitely. We'll touch on some foundational grammar, sure, but only briefly. The point is to emphasize its strategic use.
Right.
Because knowing what words to use is just one piece. Knowing how to use them to really convey your level of ambition,
Yeah.
that's the other crucial piece.
Right, the how makes all the difference. So the conversation today will start by looking at how we use future tenses strategically. Then we'll move pretty quickly into why specificity is so critical. Getting down to the nitty-gritty.
Absolutely vital.
And finally, we need to talk about the psychological side. The kind of mental armor you need when you actually put those big, ambitious plans out there into the world.
Yeah, because that takes guts.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with the basics, the sort of foundational tools for talking about a goal.
Right.
If you just want to be direct, clear, no messing around, you start with the future simple, right?
Yes, the fundamental tools are I will or I'm going to. Pretty straightforward.
But maybe not that straightforward.
Well, for our listeners who are already pretty savvy, the strategic distinction between them is actually quite important.
Okay, how so?
I will usually conveys certainty. Often, it's about an immediate, determined choice you're making right now, like, I will finish this report by Friday.
Right, it sounds like a promise, a guarantee.
Exactly. It carries high personal accountability. Now, I'm going to, on the other hand, suggest the decision was probably made earlier. It's pre-planned.
Oh, okay.
It often involves external steps already being considered or taken, like your example. I'm going to take a data science course this fall. The decision's made, maybe you've even looked up courses or saved the money.
Gotcha. The action might be slightly less immediate than I will.
Precisely. But both are direct, they're clear, and they let the listener understand your level of commitment pretty easily.
Okay, that sets a really good foundation for short-term clarity, day-to-day stuff. But here's where it gets, for me, really interesting. What if it's not just a quarterly objective? What if it's a big, distant, long-term dream?
Yeah.
Something 5, maybe 10 years away. That thing that's like your North Star guiding you. Using just I will or I'm going to for that, it often feels a bit, casual. Almost too low stakes for the scale of the ambition, doesn't it?
It really can. It feels like saying, I'm going to buy milk, when what you actually mean is, I'm going to dedicate my life to launching a global humanitarian project. The wheat is totally different.
Exactly. So what do we do then?
That's when we need to consciously elevate the language to match the ambition. You bring in phrasing that immediately signals, gravitas, longevity.
Okay.
The sources we looked at really emphasize phrases like, I aspire to.
Aspire. That feels more significant already.
It does. Or even stronger, my ultimate goal is to.
Okay.
These aren't just fancy synonyms for I want. Think of them as linguistic flags. They signal deep intrinsic motivation.
That's a really crucial distinction. But how exactly does that phrasing signal intrinsic motivation? What's the mechanism there?
Think about it from the listener's perspective. You just say, I want a promotion. The listener probably assumes external factors are the main driver. More money, a better title, status, things outside of you.
Right. The usual suspects.
But if you say, I aspire to become a leader in my field,
Okay.
suddenly you've conveyed something deeper, a commitment to growth, to having influence, to achieving mastery in your area. It's less about the immediate reward and more about the impact you want to have.
Ah, I see. So the vocabulary itself reframes the goal, giving it a higher purpose in the listener's mind.
Precisely.
Can we maybe dig into a specific example where that elevated language really captures the essence of a huge life-defining commitment?
Absolutely. Let's consider someone working towards something really profound, something tied to their identity, like starting a nonprofit focused on literacy.
Okay, big goal.
Huge goal. They wouldn't just say, I want to start a nonprofit. It sounds a bit lightweight.
Yeah, almost like an item on a to-do list.
Exactly. A much more resonant and strategically better phrasing would be something like, it's a long-held ambition of mine to establish a scalable literacy program.
Long-held ambition. That signals history, depth.
Right. It immediately conveys this isn't some whim they had last week. This is core to their mission, part of their identity. It tells the listener about the longevity, the seriousness, the sustained commitment behind the idea.
That wording really does shift the perception, doesn't it? It moves it from a maybe someday kind of thought to something that sounds almost like a statement of destiny, a strategic path.
It frames it strategically.
But I have to push back a little here. Isn't that kind of high-level aspirational language I aspire to, my ultimate goal is, isn't it sometimes a bit too formal? Maybe even sounds a little pretentious for just a casual chat with a colleague.
That's a really perceptive question. And the answer definitely lies in knowing your audience and the context.
Okay.
For those internal day-to-day check-ins with your team, yeah, keep it practical, keep it tactical. I'm planning to finish phase 2 this week. That's fine.
Makes sense.
However, when you're talking to mentors or potential investors, or maybe in a formal performance review.
Right, higher stakes situations.
Exactly. That's when that elevated language becomes necessary. You needed to articulate the full scope of your vision to justify asking for resources or support. You pull out that language when you need someone else to truly believe in the scale of what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, that clarifies it. So use the aspire language for the big vision talks and the going to or planning to for the day-to-day action steps. Makes sense.
Precisely.
But what about situations where the goal involves things outside your direct control? Yeah, external factors, gatekeepers, significant challenges you know are coming. You don't want to sound too certain or forceful if success isn't entirely guaranteed, right? You might sound naive.
Exactly right. And this brings us neatly to the role of modal verbs. I like to think of them as like confidence buffers.
Confidence buffers, I like that.
Yeah. Words like could, might, or the very useful would like to.
Yeah.
They serve to soften the statement. They make the goals sound more hopeful, maybe more polite, and crucially, less like a forceful guarantee that might be unrealistic. They help manage the perceived risk attached to your ambition.
So it introduces a dose of realism and maybe humility about the journey?
Yes, exactly. Using phrasing like, I would like to see myself working in sustainable energy in the next 5 years.
Okay.
Is a much gentler, more aspirational approach compared to forcefully declaring I will be a top engineer in that field by then.
Right. The second one sounds almost arrogant or ignores potential obstacles.
It does. The first one acknowledges there's a path ahead, potentially with unforeseen economic shifts, technological hurdles, you name it. It leaves room for the journey.
And there's a psychological element too, isn't there, for the speaker themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Linguistically and psychologically.
Yeah.
Using I hope to or I would like to allows you to articulate a big dream without creating crushing pressure on yourself. You're not setting up an impossible promise you might not be able to keep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like if you're just starting out in a brand new field.
Exactly. Saying, I hope to secure my first 2 clients by the end of Q4 feels much more honest and approachable, both for you and for others, than booming, I will be dominating the market in 3 months.
Which sounds delusional, probably.
Right. It introduces flexibility and acknowledges the learning curve.
So the key takeaway here isn't that you lack confidence when you use these modals. It's that you're showing a realistic assessment of the path. You recognize the challenges.
Precisely. That honesty is actually incredibly relatable. It builds trust.
And it gives you space, doesn't it? Space to maybe stumble or face setbacks without completely losing face or feeling like a total failure. That seems vital for long-term persistence.
It's essential for psychological longevity. Think about it. If you declare forcefully, I will get published this year, and then you receive 20 rejections, that can absolutely crush your spirit. But if you framed it internally and externally as, I hope to get a short story published this year, then those rejections become setbacks, learning experiences, data points, not a fundamental judgment on your identity or your ability as a writer.
That's a powerful reframe. You separate the difficulty of the task itself from your deep-seated desire to keep going.
Exactly. You protect the core motivation.
Okay, so if that elevated language gives the dream its gravitas, its weight, our sources really hammer home that specificity is the engine. That's what actually gets the journey started.
Absolutely. Now we're moving from just the desire to the actual doing.
Right. And for you, the learner, trying to gain knowledge quickly and thoroughly, knowing how to turn those vague wishes into concrete, trackable objectives is paramount.
It really all hinges on this crucial role of specificity. Specificity is what transforms a goal from just a fuzzy, vague wish, something you might casually mention over coffee, into a concrete, trackable plan, something you can actually measure your progress against.
It's the difference between just having a cloudy dream in your head and having a clear map with actual GPS coordinates plotted out.
Perfect analogy.
Let's look at that example from the sources, because the contrast is really stark, isn't it?
It is. They contrast the incredibly vague, I want to be better at English.
Which means almost nothing on its own. It's passive, totally immeasurable.
Exactly. Contrast that with the highly specific, action-oriented goal. My objective is to achieve a C1 level in English within the next 12 months.
Okay. Measurable benchmark, C1, and timeline, 12 months.
By specifically focusing on improving my business vocabulary and practicing my presentation skills.
And there are the defined areas of focus. Brilliant.
See how that specific goal instantly gives you 3 critical components: benchmark, timeline, focus areas.
Yeah, your mind immediately shifts, doesn't it? From what do I even do to, okay, how do I allocate my study time between vocab and presentations?
Precisely. It becomes a project plan, not just a fuzzy desire floating around. And that clarity is incredibly motivating. Gives you something precise to aim for, not just this general sense of wanting to move upward.
That clarity then naturally leads into the next big challenge, which is breaking down that now specific dream. Because even a specific goal, like achieve C1 in 12 months, is still massive. It can feel overwhelming.
Absolutely. If you just stare at the whole mountain, you're likely to feel paralyzed. And that feeling of overwhelm, it kills motivation faster than almost anything else.
So how do we combat that?
You have to chunk it down. Think about the psychology of micro wins.
Yeah.
We need manageable, motivating steps.
Okay.
So instead of the huge, potentially endless task of, I want to improve my vocabulary.
Which could take a lifetime.
Right. You focus on a defined, achievable action. This month, I'm going to learn and actively use 15 new idioms related to business negotiations.
15. Okay, why 15?
Because it's specific. It's large enough to feel like meaningful progress.
Right.
But it's small enough that you can realistically tackle it within a few weeks without burning out.
And then you can take it off the list.
Exactly. Ticking off those small, defined goals gives you a real, tangible sense of accomplishment. And that feeling fuels your motivation to tackle the next small chunk. It creates momentum.
This really highlights that essential mindset shift we need to make. Focusing on the doing, the process, rather than just dreaming about the end result.
Yes. Active process language.
We need to use language that describes where we are in the journey right now, not just where we hope to end up someday.
It's the difference between saying, I hope to finish my book someday, which is pure dreaming.
Passive, vague.
And saying, right now, I am actively outlining Act 2, specifically focusing on the midpoint reversal. That's doing.
That process language sounds like a powerful tool, especially for creative goals that can feel overwhelming.
Oh, it's a fantastic defense against procrastination for creatives. It grounds the effort. If you're writing that novel, instead of being paralyzed by the sheer size of the 80,000-word task.
Which is terrifying.
Totally. You use these active, present tense phrases. I'm currently working on the character development for my protagonist, specifically mapping out their internal conflict arc.
Okay.
Or, this week, my focus is on outlining the specific plot beats of the first act's inciting incident.
It makes it concrete. manageable.
Exactly. That language keeps the goal grounded in today's work and motivates that daily progress, one specific building block at a time.
And professionally, this active process language is maybe even more critical, isn't it? Especially when you need to demonstrate commitment to stakeholders, bosses, investors.
Absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
If your long-term goal is, say, opening that language school we talked about,
Right.
you don't just keep saying, I want to open a school. After a while, that just sounds like a pipe dream, a fantasy.
Yeah, people might start to roll their eyes.
They might. Instead, you use active language that details the process you're engaged in right now. I'm currently researching various curriculum models suitable for adult learners. I'm developing a specific 5-year financial projection for the business plan, and I'm actively investigating potential locations and zoning requirements in the city center.
Wow. That level of detail signals serious commitment. It proves you're not just dreaming, you're actively executing the necessary steps.
It transforms you in their eyes from just a visionary into a capable executor, someone who gets things done.
I think we really need to underline this. Tracking progress through specific, measurable targets is fundamental to actually achieving anything big.
It is. Just compare the utter vagueness of, I want to be successful.
Which means nothing. Success in what? By when?
Exactly. Compare that to the crystal clarity of, my goal is to onboard 5 new enterprise clients for our software this quarter.
Okay, that's measurable, it's time-bound, it's completely trackable. You know at the end of the quarter if you hit it or not.
Precisely. It gives you key performance indicators, KPIs, but for your own personal ambition.
It really is like the travel analogy used earlier, isn't it?
It really is. It's the difference between vaguely saying, I want to go somewhere nice someday.
Which leads to never going anywhere.
Probably. Versus planning a real trip, choosing a specific destination, booking the flights and hotels, maybe even sketching out a rough daily itinerary.
Right.
Big dreams require that same level of logistical commitment in how we talk about them and plan them. The grand vision is the destination, sure. But the specific steps, the equivalent of booking the flights, planning the museum visits, those are your process goals.
And those process goals articulated with specific language are what actually make the dream happen.
Exactly. Without that process language and those specific targets, the dream just stays a passive thought gathering dust in the back of your mind.
Okay, let's pivot now to something a bit sensitive but really necessary. What happens when those big specific plans, well, don't work out?
Yeah, the reality check moments.
Right. We need the right language, the right tools for talking about goals that didn't materialize. We want to promote resilience, not get stuck in regret or disappointment.
This is where we can strategically use the past perfect tense. It's actually a perfect, pardon the pun, narrative device for acknowledging those past intentions gracefully.
Okay, the past perfect, how does that work?
The key phrase structure is often, I had hoped to.
Had hoped.
Yes. That structure lets you clearly separate your original intention from whatever happened next, the action you took, or maybe the external obstacle that got in the way.
So an example might be, I had hoped to travel through South America last year, but then the pandemic hit and made international travel impossible.
Exactly. That construction does several things. It acknowledges the ambition, signals your initial commitment,
Right.
but then it allows you to pivot smoothly and gracefully to the reason it was curtailed in this case, an external factor, without dwelling on personal disappointment or implying you failed somehow.
It lets you control the narrative of the setback.
Precisely. You frame it. Or you could use a slightly simpler phrasing like, I was planning on, for example. I was planning on learning to code over the summer, but a major unexpected project landed on my desk at work and just absorbed all my available time and energy.
That sounds very practical, honest, mature even.
It is. It communicates the setback clearly, demonstrating that external factors, not necessarily a lack of commitment or a change of heart, forced a reprioritization.
The psychological benefit here seems huge.
Right.
Because it frames the, let's say, abandonment of the goal, not as some kind of character failure,
Right.
but as a strategic adjustment based on unavoidable circumstances. It validates your original intention, which must help preserve self-esteem.
Absolutely. It protects your sense of agency and competence, even when things don't go to plan.
And sometimes, when you're talking about these derailed plans, the sources mention that a bit of strategic humor can actually be really effective.
Well, definitely. Humor can go a long way. It shows resilience, self-awareness about the bumps in the road.
Makes you more relatable.
Instantly more relatable, and signals emotional intelligence. It shows you haven't taken the setback too seriously, that you can laugh at yourself.
I loved that specific anecdote in the sources about the musical ambition, the violin story.
Ah, yes, the violin. That's a classic example of a noble goal meeting a very harsh external reality check.
So what happened?
The specific detail was someone trying earnestly to learn the violin, only to have their family and apparently their neighbors collectively vote against it.
Oh, no. So noise complaints, basically.
Presumably.
Yeah.
But notice the humor.
Yeah.
It acknowledges that maybe the pursuit was a bit unrealistic or perhaps just incredibly disruptive.
Right.
But the failure wasn't framed as personal inadequacy. It was due to, let's call it, unintentional sonic violence against the community.
Ah, that's a great way to put it.
It frames the change in plan in a positive, lighthearted way. It allows you to laugh at the situation, acknowledge the attempt, and then maybe move on to a less ear-splitting goal, like the ukulele, perhaps.
That self-awareness is really key, isn't it? You're acknowledging the original intention, I had hoped to learn an instrument, without letting the fact that it didn't work out define your future willingness to try things.
Exactly. You're showing maturity. You understand that sometimes goals change because the situation changes, or maybe, just maybe, that particular goal wasn't the right fit after all.
And are there other ways to gracefully talk about goals that just fizzled out, maybe didn't get derailed by something specific, but just lost momentum or evolved?
Yes, absolutely. Instead of sounding defeated, like, oh, I gave up on that, you can frame it as evolution.
How would that sound?
You might say something like, I initially allocated significant resources toward establishing a traditional brick-and-mortar office space.
Okay.
But based on recent market trends and client feedback, my priorities have evolved. We're now pivoting toward a fully remote, digital-first solution, which actually aligns better with current market demands and offers greater scalability.
Ah, that sounds strategic, not like failure at all.
Right. It frames the past goal not as a mistake, but as a necessary phase of learning and adaptation that led to a better, more current strategy.
Right.
It's all about the narrative you construct. And this focus on narrative and mindset brings us directly to the psychology behind actually sharing these goals and dreams. This is absolutely vital for you, the listener, to build confidence.
Yeah, because sharing a deep dream, something really personal, it makes you inherently vulnerable, doesn't it?
Incredibly vulnerable.
And that vulnerability often comes with this really potent fear, the fear of criticism, of judgment, of people maybe laughing at you or doubting you.
And that fear can be a genuine confidence killer. It can stop you dead in your tracks.
It really can. You put your heart out there, you talk about wanting to start that huge project or maybe change careers entirely, and then you get met with doubt. Or negative feedback. Sometimes it's subtle, just a raised eyebrow. Other times it's really overt criticism.
And either way, it can completely halt your momentum. So we have to acknowledge that sharing dreams can lead to negativity. It's a real risk.
So what's the strategy? How do you handle it?
Well, the primary strategy, and this is backed up by decades of psychological research, is to cultivate profound personal resilience. You have to work on internalizing the fundamental fact that your dream does not require universal approval.
That's easier said than done, though.
Oh, it takes practice. But it's crucial. You have to accept that not everyone is going to understand your path. In fact, if your vision is truly unique or ambitious, most people probably won't get it initially.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. The single most important, non-negotiable believer in that room when you're sharing your dream has to be you.
Okay. So internal resilience is number one. But practically speaking, how do you sustain that belief when the criticism, subtle or not, starts rolling in?
This is where the source material offers a fantastic, really actionable strategy. Build yourself a personal board of directors.
A personal board of directors, like for a company.
Exactly like that concept.
Yeah.
But for your life and goals,
Okay.
it's a small, very carefully selected, highly trusted group of people, maybe just 3 to 5 individuals.
Okay. And what do they do? Are they just cheerleaders?
No, critically, they're not just blind cheerleaders. You need people who will offer genuinely constructive advice, people who will challenge your assumptions, push you to think harder.
Okay, that sounds valuable.
But who, most importantly, possess an unwavering belief in your fundamental capacity to achieve great things, even if they question the specific plan.
So they believe in you, even if they critique the idea sometimes.
Precisely. These are the very few people whose opinions you should actively seek out and truly value. They act as a filter, helping you separate the constructive feedback from the unhelpful noise from casual critics, or maybe even envious bystanders.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do you choose these people? What qualifies someone to be on your personal board?
Great question. The sources suggest selecting them based on roughly 3 criteria. First, undeniable integrity. You have to trust their character implicitly. Second, ideally, some relevant experience or perspective, though that's less critical than trust. And third, that genuine bedrock trust we talked about. They have to have your best interests at heart.
And how should you interact with them? What kinds of questions should you ask?
This is key. They must be willing to tell you the honest truth, even when it's difficult. Like, hey, I think your timeline here is unrealistic, or have you considered this potential risk?
Right, constructive challenges.
But they should never make you feel like you are flawed or incapable. It's about the idea, not the person. And when you discuss a major ambition with them, you shouldn't just ask, so what do you think? Is this going to work?
Why not? That seems like a natural question.
Because it invites broad, potentially unhelpful opinions or even pessimism. Instead, ask strategic, actionable questions.
Like what?
Like, based on your experience, what are the 3 biggest operational risks you foresee in my proposed timeline for launching this? Or what key resources or potential connections do you think I might be overlooking right now?
Ah, I see. You're using them to gather specific data and insights, not just for vague validation or approval.
Exactly. You leverage their wisdom strategically.
Okay, so having that trusted support structure is vital. And that leads nicely into the next psychological tool the sources mentioned, actively reframing the language you use when you talk about the journey itself.
Yes, this is huge. You should consciously aim to discuss your dreams and your progress through the lens of growth, not solely through the lens of achieving perfection or constantly worrying about failure.
It requires an active mindset shift, moving away from what psychologists call a fixed mindset.
Precisely. Think about the difference in language. Someone with a fixed mindset, facing a challenge, might say something like, oh man, I'm really worried I'll never finish this project. I'm just not naturally good at long-term follow-through.
Right, that language emphasizes a perceived, unchanging personal deficit. I'm just not good at X.
Exactly. Now, someone consciously cultivating a growth mindset would reframe that same situation. They might say, wow, this project is definitely proving to be a challenge, but you know what? I'm learning so much along the way about effective resource management and the importance of building persistence.
That's completely different. The focus shifts entirely to the continuous process of learning and skill acquisition.
Yes, it centers on the accumulation of transferable knowledge and resilience, not on the fear of an incomplete outcome or a fixed personal flaw.
That's powerful. And to help bolster that positive, growth-oriented mindset, especially during the inevitable tough times, we need to talk about the power of visualizing success.
Right.
Mental rehearsal, is that just woo-woo stuff, or is there substance to it?
Oh, there's significant substance to it, used by elite athletes, performers, surgeons. Mental rehearsal is a powerful cognitive tool that literally prepares your brain for the path ahead.
How does it work in the context of, say, opening that language school?
Well, it means more than just vaguely picturing a successful opening day party. Effective visualization involves mentally rehearsing the process and even potential challenges.
Okay.
Picture the classroom setup in detail. Visualize yourself engaging confidently with students. Imagine specific teaching scenarios, even difficult ones like a student really struggling with a concept, and mentally rehearse yourself handling it calmly and effectively.
So you practice responding to challenges in your mind?
Yes, and you visualize the positive atmosphere you want to create. You picture the curriculum succeeding, students making progress. You even visualize achieving specific milestones like signing up your 50th student or hitting a certain financial target, and really feel the sense of accomplishment.
So it's like pre-paving the neural pathways for success.
That's a great way to put it. It helps sustain your motivation during the inevitable daily grind and prepares you mentally for those unforeseen obstacles, making them feel less disruptive when they occur.
Okay, visualization is a tool. Now, we absolutely have to address rejection head on, because for many ambitious goals, rejection is almost guaranteed at some point.
It often is. And we need to fundamentally reframe how we think about it. The sources strongly advocate for introducing the concept that rejection is not a stop sign.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's simply data. Feedback, information, it's a signal, possibly indicating a need for course correction.
Rejection as data. I like that. How do you apply that practically?
You have to treat it almost scientifically, objectively. If a publisher rejects your manuscript,
Which happens all the time.
all the time, that rejection contains data. It might be data about the effectiveness of your pitch letter, or maybe about whether you targeted the right agent or publisher for your genre. It could be data about current market demand for similar books.
But what's not data about?
Crucially, it is not data about your inherent worth as a human being, or even necessarily your ultimate potential as a writer.
That separation is key. And to illustrate the power of persistence using that rejection data, the sources bring up J.K. Rowling, right?
Yes, it's such a powerful and now famous example. Essential, really. J.K. Rowling was famously rejected, what, a dozen times? Before Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone finally found a home with Bloomsbury.
A dozen times. That's incredible persistence.
And those weren't just simple form rejections saying no thanks. Apparently, she used the feedback she could glean as data points.
How so?
Well, some early feedback reportedly focused on the book being perhaps too long for the target children's market at the time, or maybe too conceptually dense for young readers.
Okay, so specific critiques.
Specific data. She didn't abandon her core vision, the story she absolutely had to tell.
Yeah.
But she likely processed that data regarding length and maybe complexity, possibly refining her pitch or approach.
And she persevered because the core goal, telling that story, was so deeply intrinsically motivated for her.
Exactly. Imagine if she'd stopped after the first rejection, or the fifth, or the 10th. That anecdote just powerfully underscores the essential value of persistence. Rejection is data that helps you refine the product or the pitch. It doesn't mean you abandon the entire mission.
Wow. Okay, so resilience, support systems, reframing, visualization, treating rejection as data. This all kind of rolls up to a larger point, doesn't it?
It does. The big picture view is that our dreams and goals are allowed to evolve. They're not set in stone.
That feels like permission to change your mind.
It is. What you passionately want today might shift next year based on new experiences or information. And that's perfectly natural, totally okay. The truly important thing is that commitment to continuous learning, to growth, and maintaining forward momentum, using your language flexibly to reflect the current active stage of your ever-evolving journey. All right, so to kind of wrap up our linguistic toolkit here, let's focus specifically on how we share goals when collaboration is involved. Because sharing goals effectively can build community and provide really crucial accountability.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not always just about my dream. Sometimes it's our dream.
Exactly. And this often revolves around the strategic use of inclusive language. Meaning consciously switching from I language to we and let's. When you're talking about a shared goal, or even just when you're involving accountability buddies.
How does that help?
It immediately builds a sense of shared challenge, of teamwork, of collective energy. It makes the goal feel psychologically a bit lighter and often more achievable because you're not carrying it alone.
Okay, I can see that. So applying this to maybe a team project at work?
Right. Instead of one person saying, okay, I will deliver this feature by Friday, which sounds isolating and puts all the pressure on them. The team lead or the group might say, we will commit to delivering this core feature together by the end of the sprint. It instantly spreads the responsibility, but also spreads the potential victory. Everyone shares in it.
We saw this apply even to the instrument example earlier, right?
Yeah.
The less disruptive ukulele.
Exactly. The potentially less neighbor-annoying ukulele goal. Instead of one person struggling alone, the goal becomes shared. Let's learn one complete song together in the next 3 months.
That immediately sounds more fun, more motivating.
Totally. Because the effort is shared, you have a built-in support system, you have that accountability structure baked right in. And that shared pressure is often really positive pressure. It keeps you going.
And this inclusive language, we and let's, it's also good for tackling challenges together without sounding negative, right?
Yes, it's great for acknowledging difficulties up front, but framing them as a shared problem to solve.
How might that sound?
You could say something like, we know finding consistent time to practice this new skill will be tough, given everyone's schedules, acknowledging the reality. But we can commit to finding 15 non-negotiable minutes for focused practice every single day.
Okay, so you acknowledge the difficulty. We know it's tough, but immediately pivot to a specific shared commitment. We can commit to 15 minutes.
Precisely. That specific shared commitment makes the difficulty feel manageable, and it signals maturity in proactive problem solving as a group.
Okay, that's inclusive language for collaboration. Now let's inject some real high ambition language back into the mix with some motivational idioms.
Ah, the power phrases.
Yeah. When you really need to convey boundless ambition, a huge vision, what are some of the go-to phrases the sources recommend?
Well, if you want to signal that you are aiming really high, maybe even for something that seems almost impossible, you can use the classic idiom to reach for the stars.
Okay, reach for the stars evokes big dreams.
It does. It suggests aiming for extremely ambitious, perhaps somewhat abstract goals that might seem completely out of reach to more grounded observers. It's pure inspiration fuel.
And what about that other one for just pure, unadulterated optimism?
Ah, you must mean the sky's the limit.
That's the one.
Yeah, that phrase suggests there are absolutely no boundaries, not financial, not logistical, not even imaginative to what you or the team can potentially achieve.
These sound great for like kickoff meetings or maybe writing a vision statement, really rallying the troops.
Exactly. They set a powerful aspirational tone.
But what about idioms for a more, let's say, strategic, grounded, long-term ambition?
Right, because sometimes reach for the stars might sound a bit naive if you're talking to, say, serious investors.
Exactly.
For those situations, when you need to articulate a large, complex, multi-year goal, perhaps one that involves making some tough short-term sacrifices or accepting slow initial growth, the idiom playing the long game is perfect.
Playing the long game. Okay, how does that land?
It signals strategic thinking. It acknowledges up front that this big dream requires patience, requires discipline, maybe requires weathering some early storms. It keeps everyone, including yourself, motivated by implicitly reminding them of the ultimate distant reward and the deliberate strategy involved in getting there.
That sounds very useful for managing expectations while still holding on to the big vision.
Precise.
Okay, finally, let's circle back to those deeply personal goals, like travel. These often get dismissed as just simple wishes, not serious goals.
Yeah, sometimes unfairly.
So when you talk about these personal aspirations, how can you use language to convey their real importance to you?
The key is to use phrases that reveal why the goal matters to your personal growth, your intellectual development, your understanding of the world, not just what the destination is. You need to show the underlying motivation.
Give me an example instead of just
saying, I want to go to Italy, which is fine, but a bit flat.
right.
You infuse it with the source of your passion. I'm absolutely fascinated by ancient Roman history, specifically the transition period from the Republic to the Empire, and I want to see the ruins firsthand.
Connects it to intellectual curiosity.
Or I'm really eager to immerse myself in a completely different culinary culture, particularly to understand the deep regional traditions of pasta making across Italy.
Okay, that makes the dream much more relatable, engaging, because you're linking the travel to your genuine intrinsic curiosity or passion.
Exactly. It elevates it beyond just tourism.
And again, specificity helps here too, right?
Massively.
Yeah.
Just contrast the general, I want to go to Italy, with adding specific, engaging details that show you've actually thought about it, done some research.
Like,
I really want to try authentic, handmade tortellini on brodo in Bologna, and I want to spend at least 2 days exploring the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, focusing specifically on their collection of early Renaissance portraiture.
wow, okay. That level of detail demonstrates real commitment and makes the dream sound vibrant, tangible, and well-researched, not just a whim.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this applies globally, of course.
Yeah.
It's about linking the goal to a desire for genuine life experience. Maybe you have a dream of hiking the Inca Trail in Peru. Your language should reflect the connection you feel to that deep history. I feel really motivated to personally experience the incredible ancient engineering of the Incan Empire up close and try to understand the history of the Sapa Inca dynasty.
Connects it to history and engineering.
Or maybe you're planning a trip to Cambodia. My goal is to explore the ancient temples of Angkor Wat and try to trace the historical arc of the Khmer civilization through its architectural peak.
The language you use should mirror the excitement and the depth of your personal motivation.
Exactly. It turns what could sound like a general travel wish
Oh.
into a true, meaningful life goal that resonates with purpose. #outro.
So after diving deep into all of this, what does it really boil down to for you, the learner? We've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have.
From the nitty-gritty of using tenses strategically to managing rejection, building that personal board of directors. It seems like the core ingredients for articulating your goals effectively can be summarized in maybe 3 key pillars.
I think so. What would you say they are?
I'd say confidence, believing in yourself and your vision. clarity using specific, actionable language, and maintaining a positive mindset, focusing on growth and resilience.
Confidence, clarity, and a positive mindset. I think that captures it perfectly. It really is about finding your authentic voice, your way of expressing these things.
Yeah.
And then learning to use language quite deliberately as a tool for your own empowerment.
And maybe the single biggest takeaway, the thing we kept coming back to.
The focus on doing.
Exactly. Focusing on the doing, using that active, process-oriented language rather than just getting lost in the dreaming about the finished product.
Yeah. Use your words to define and energize your strategic steps, not just to paint a picture of the final destination way off in the distance.
This whole discussion really highlighted that effective goal setting is actually a lot like planning a detailed itinerary for a major trip, isn't it?
It really is. You need those specific targets, those book steps, those concrete plans.
And we learned that modal verbs like could or would like to can act as useful confidence buffers when you're articulating those really high-stakes dreams.
Managing the perceived risk.
And if we truly accept that rejection isn't failure, but it's actually just data.
Yeah, valuable feedback.
And that persistence, informed by that data, is ultimately the key to achieving big things.
Then that leads us to the final, maybe provocative thought we want to leave you with.
Which is?
It's this. Thinking about your own biggest, maybe farthest out dream right now. What is one concrete, non-negotiable step, however small, that you are actively researching, outlining, planning, or visualizing right now?
Not someday, right now.
Right now. What action are you taking to move that dream from the someday maybe wish list into the currently working on plan? Go turn your language into action.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are digging into something I think almost everyone struggles with, especially when you're trying something ambitious, something new. That feeling of self-doubt, that little voice that pops up and asks, wait, who do you think you are to be doing this? Whether it's mastering a really complex new subject, launching a big creative project, or maybe just stepping into a role that feels, well, a bit intimidating. We all know that feeling. It's that knot in your stomach, that internal critic whispering you're a fraud. And our source material for this deep dive is, well, it's fascinating because it doesn't just say, get rid of this feeling. No, it actually gives us a kind of roadmap, a psychological and practical one for understanding it, reframing it, and then using specific tools, language, habits to actually move past it. It's about turning that fear into fuel.
That's exactly the core idea. We're talking about imposter syndrome, right? And it's really important we define it properly because the term gets thrown around a lot. This isn't just feeling a bit unsure of yourself. Sometimes it's more persistent than that. It's this corrosive internal sense that you're intellectually phony, that deep down feeling that you don't deserve your achievements. And it comes with this constant, sometimes really paralyzing fear that someone's going to find you out, expose you as a fake. What the sources really stress is just how common this is. It's not some rare thing. It's almost like the shadow that follows ambition. You see it in students, you see it in top executives, Nobel laureates, CEOs. It seems to be the price you pay for operating right at the edge of your competence.
Right. Let's dig into that psychological reality a bit more, because when it hits, it can feel completely overwhelming. That internal dialogue can be really vicious. It's like it's screaming at you, who do you think you are trying to write that book? Or teach that class, or lead that project. You're not a real expert, you're just pretending, and any minute now, everyone's going to see right through you.
Yeah, and understanding the why behind that voice is key.
Yeah.
We need to look at the psychology of comfort zones. Our brains, fundamentally, are wired for safety, for efficiency. When we try something new, something ambitious, we're basically introducing inefficiency and risk. So that internal voice, the self-doubt, it's actually a kind of defense mechanism.
Defense mechanism? How so?
Well, it's the brain trying to pull you back. Back into what's comfortable, what's safe, maybe even back towards mediocrity. Because think about it, you can't fail if you don't try anything hard. The brain prefers the known territory, even if that territory is way below your actual potential. It just requires less energy, less emotional risk.
Okay.
So if you try to just fight that voice with willpower, telling it to shut up, you'll often fail because you're basically fighting a primal drive for safety. What the source material suggests is don't try to silence it. Change how you interpret its message.
Okay, that sounds powerful. Let's really unpack this crucial mindset shift. If we can't just eliminate the feeling, we repurpose it. What's the big reframe the sources offer?
The reframe is, honestly, it's quite liberating. It can fundamentally change your relationship with that self-doubt. You have to start recognizing that this feeling of inadequacy, this anxiety, It is not proof that you're failing or that you're inept. It's actually the opposite. That feeling, that anxiety of being a fraud, it's verifiable evidence that you are pushing yourself, that you're stepping outside your comfort zone.
Evidence. How? How is feeling bad evidence of something good?
Think about when the feeling shows up. If you were doing something easy, something you've done 1,000 times, like tying your shoes, you wouldn't feel any anxiety about being exposed, right? Yeah. The imposter feeling only kicks in when the stakes feel high, when the task is complex enough that it demands growth from you, when you're trying to operate just a little bit beyond what you currently know you can do.
Ah, okay. So the equation flips completely. Instead of, I feel like a fraud, therefore I am a fraud, I should stop.
Exactly.
It becomes, I feel like a fraud, which means I'm stretching myself, I'm learning, I should keep going.
Precisely. The presence of self-doubt becomes a reliable, well, a symptom of growth.
Like friction. The friction you get when you're climbing something steep, it's the sound of your brain working hard to figure things out.
That's a great analogy. You use your metacognition, your ability to observe your own thoughts. So when that voice screams, "You're a fraud," you don't get into an argument with it. You just perform a quick logical check. You say to yourself, interesting. This high anxiety, this feeling of inadequacy, it tells me this task is important, is challenging, and I'm right at the edge of my current abilities, which is exactly where I need to be if I want to learn and grow.
That changes everything for someone trying to learn something new, doesn't it?
It really does. It takes away that crippling self-judgment. It makes doubt feel normal, predictable, even necessary for getting better. It means you're engaging with the challenge at the right level. Maybe if you don't feel like a fraud sometimes, you're not aiming high enough.
Okay, so understanding the why is step one. But, when that anxiety really hits hard, maybe you're halfway through writing something or about to give a presentation, just understanding it might not be enough. We need practical tools, right? Tactics.
Absolutely. You need ways to fight those feelings with cold, hard facts.
Right.
And our sources offer 3 really good interconnected strategies for doing just that. They're all centered on separating that subjective internal feeling from objective, verifiable reality.
Okay, let's get into them. Strategy number 1.
Strategy 1 is the evidence log.
The evidence log. I like the sound of that. It sounds very methodical.
It is. It's wonderfully objective. The idea is you treat that imposter voice like a lawyer treats a weak argument. You just overwhelm it with concrete evidence.
Okay. How does it work in practice?
It's simple, really. You get a physical notebook or maybe a digital file, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you meticulously record every single achievement, every success, every milestone, every completed task, no matter how small it seems.
Every single one.
Every single one. Consistency and specificity are key here because we tend to forget the small wins, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And then the imposter voice can just paint this broad negative picture. So you can't just write, had a good day. You need data.
Data points.
Exactly. Like successfully fixed that bug that was holding everyone up, or finished the draft of chapter 3, hit my word count, or even just spent 45 minutes practicing Spanish grammar even though I was totally exhausted.
What I find really powerful about that is it becomes a concrete counter story. The imposter voice deals in feelings, right? Generalizations like you always mess up.
Yes. Vague accusations.
But the log deals only in specific facts. On Tuesday, I did X. On Wednesday, I achieved Y.
Precisely. And the instruction is, when you feel that doubt creeping in, you physically pull out the log and review it. You force that doubting voice to confront the actual data.
You're basically building a rock-solid legal case against your own self-doubt.
That's a perfect way to put it. If the voice whispers, you haven't really done anything, you just open the log and say, actually, here's the last 3 weeks of effort and results. You stop arguing about the feeling and you present the proof of your labor.
But what about, bad weeks? What if you look at the log and you really didn't achieve much? Doesn't that just feed the imposter?
That's a really important point. The strategy isn't to lie to yourself or fake the log. It's about recording the reality of effort, not just the shiny outcomes. So even if an entry reads, failed to finish the coding module today, you add, but I spent 2 solid hours analyzing why it failed and identifying the block. That's still evidence. It's evidence of engagement, of grappling with the problem.
Ah, okay. So the log reflects the journey, warts and all, not just the highlights.
Exactly. It needs to be a true record of the process.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second strategy?
The second strategy builds directly on the log. It requires developing a higher degree of metacognition. That's the ability to observe your own thoughts without immediately buying into them or judging them. You need to consciously, habitually separate your subjective internal feelings from objective, verifiable facts.
Feelings versus facts. Okay, define that distinction more clearly.
Okay. The feeling is almost always emotional in general, like I'm not good enough, or this project is just terrible, or I'm definitely going to fail. These feelings feel huge, overwhelming, partly because they lack specifics. They're like a fog.
Right. And the fact.
The fact, by contrast, is measurable. It's undeniable. It's grounded in observable reality. Facts are things like, I showed up and worked for 2 hours today, or I completed 3 out of the 5 revisions requested, or I have practiced guitar for 20 minutes every day this month.
So the exercise, moment by moment, is to catch yourself having that negative feeling.
Yes, catch the feeling, that wave of inadequacy.
And then immediately ask yourself, okay, what is the concrete, verifiable fact that this feeling is actually based on?
Exactly. And when you really push yourself to answer that, you often realize the feeling isn't based on a specific recent failure at all. It's usually based on a generalized fear, or maybe a past experience that isn't relevant now. The goal is radical adherence to reality. You actively choose to ignore the emotional judgment, terrible, not good enough, and focus only on the verifiable facts of your effort and output. Completed 3 revisions. Showed up, did the work.
You ground yourself in what actually happened.
Yes. It neutralizes the imposter's purely emotional attack. You're basically telling your brain, look, I hear your opinion, but right now I'm only dealing in evidence.
Okay, evidence log, feelings versus facts. What's the third weapon in this arsenal?
The third, and maybe the ultimate weapon, is mastering your why. This is about connecting with your core, intrinsic motivation for pursuing the goal in the first place.
Intrinsic motivation. Okay, we need to be really clear on the difference here, right? Because we live in a world that's obsessed with external validation.
Absolutely.
Getting the book published, getting the promotion, making a certain amount of money. These are external outcomes. They feel important.
They are important, often necessary even.
Yeah.
But they make for hollow anchors if they are your only reason. Because if your why depends entirely on what other people think or grant you,
then the imposter voice just shifts its attack.
exactly, it says, oh, you only got published because they needed to fill a slot, or that promotion, purely politics. External rewards are inherently unstable because they depend on things outside your control, other people's opinions, luck, market conditions.
Whereas the intrinsic why.
The intrinsic why is completely self-contained. It's stable because you control it. It's about your internal reasons for doing the work.
But hold on a sec. Is it really realistic to just dismiss external rewards? I mean, people need to earn a living, careers depend on recognition. How do you balance needing those external things with relying on an internal anchor? Doesn't one undermine the other?
That's a critical question, and the sources aren't saying dismiss external rewards entirely. That would be naive. It's more about demoting them. They aren't the core reason you show up every day. They are, hopefully, the welcome consequences of doing meaningful work consistently.
Okay, so the external rewards are the bonus, not the engine.
Precisely. The internal why is the engine. It's what makes you willing to do the work even when those external rewards are uncertain or delayed or maybe even absent for a while.
So defining that intrinsic core is crucial. What are some examples?
It could be anything deeply personal. Is your why about exploring a certain theme through your writing? Is it about the satisfaction of building elegant code? Is it about understanding the world better through research? The sources gave a really powerful example. Defining your why as wanting to connect with people on an emotional level, to tell a story or share an idea that makes someone else feel seen, feel understood.
Wow, that really shifts things, doesn't it?
It does.
Because it moves the focus away from this arbitrary external label, am I a real writer, or am I a real expert, and puts it onto a mission you can check in on every day. Am I trying to connect today? Am I honoring that purpose?
Exactly right. When you have that deep internal mission, the self-doubt just, it doesn't have as much to grab onto. Your purpose becomes your anchor. So when doubt hits, your counterargument isn't defensive, it's affirmative. My purpose is connection, and I'm honoring that by showing up and doing the work today. The act of doing it is the validation, regardless of the outcome.
So your daily effort itself becomes the success metric, not some future uncertain judgment.
Yes. It guarantees that today's work has meaning.
Okay, this is all incredibly helpful for the internal battle. But let's talk about the grind, the day-to-day reality of hard work. Even with a strong why and an evidence log, it's still tough. Learning is messy, creating is messy, and if we just fall back on saying things like, oh, I'm stuck, or this is just too hard, we kind of reinforce that feeling of personal failure, don't we?
We absolutely do. Our language shapes our reality. Adopting more descriptive, more professional language for the struggle is actually a powerful cognitive reframing technique.
How so?
It lets you zoom out from the immediate emotional reaction, the feeling of being stuck or overwhelmed. It allows you to treat the difficulty like a technical problem that needs analysis and a solution, rather than seeing it as proof of your own inadequacy. That analytical distance is crucial for momentum.
Okay, so we need a better vocabulary for the grind. What specific phrases do the sources suggest for articulating this productive struggle?
Well, let's start with when things get really complex, really detailed. You're deep in the weeds of a plot point, or maybe some intricate financial data, or structuring a dense argument. Instead of just saying, I'm lost, you can say, I'm really in the weeds with the details at the moment.
In the weeds. I like that. It sounds professional. It implies complexity, density.
Right, not failure. It says you're deep in the process, grappling with it, not failing at it.
Okay. What about when the effort feels really intense, like you're wrestling with something?
That's where you need a strong verb that conveys active engagement, for instance. I'm currently grappling with some complex character motivations, or for a technical field. I'm grappling with how to refactor this core piece of code.
Grappling. It suggests a real intellectual struggle, doesn't it? An active fight with the material.
Exactly. It's active, it's engaged.
Okay, but here's a question. How do you distinguish that productive grappling from just, spinning your wheels, or even procrastinating by pretending to think deeply?
That's a fundamental diagnostic question you have to ask yourself. Productive grappling usually involves focused iteration and some kind of objective output, even if that output is just notes on failed attempts. You can usually articulate the specific challenge you're wrestling with. I'm stuck between option A and option B, and here are the pros and cons I've worked through. There's analysis happening.
Okay.
Procrastination, on the other hand, often involves high anxiety, but very little specific action on the core problem. You might be busy with other things, emails, organizing files, researching unrelated topics, basically avoiding the tough bit.
Got it. That's a helpful distinction.
Yeah.
Now, what about plateaus? Those times when you're putting in the effort, but progress seems to stall. Super common in learning new skills or languages.
Yes, very common and frustrating. For that, the sources suggest using the term, I feel like I've hit a plateau.
Just naming it like that helps?
It does, because a plateau is a recognized normal phase in many learning curves. It's often temporary. So naming it normalizes the stagnation. It frames the situation not as I'm failing, but as my current methods have maybe reached their limit. I need to introduce some variation or a new strategy to start climbing again.
It shifts focus from effort deficit to strategy adjustment.
Exactly. And finally, when you encounter something genuinely new and difficult, a tough piece of software, a complex new field, you externalize the difficulty. You state it as a fact about the subject matter itself. The learning curve for this software is incredibly steep, or this field has a really steep learning curve.
So it's not I'm slow, it's this is hard.
Precisely. You're acknowledging the inherent difficulty, which stops you from internalizing the struggle as a personal failing. You're stating a fact about the material, not a judgment about yourself.
The overall impact of using this kind of analytical language seems huge. It creates instant emotional distance.
It really does.
You stop thinking I'm failing and start thinking, okay, this is a steep curve. What tools or strategies do I need to climb it? It helps maintain momentum because you haven't let the struggle define you personally.
That's the core benefit.
Okay, so we've covered the psychology of doubt, the practical tools like the log and the why, and now the language to use during the struggle. But ultimately, consistent action, actually doing the work, is what chips away at the imposter feeling over time, right?
Absolutely. Understanding and reframing are crucial, but they don't replace the need for actual labor.
Which brings us to habits. Connecting that daily grind back to establishing solid, sustainable habits seems essential.
It is. And to make sure that action actually happens consistently, especially when motivation is low, the sources strongly recommend habit stacking.
Habit stacking. Okay, explain that.
It's a really effective technique because it bypasses the need for willpower or decision-making at the moment you need to start. The core idea is simple. You anchor a new habit, you want to build onto an existing habit that you already do automatically.
An existing routine.
Exactly. Something you do every day without thinking, like making coffee, brushing your teeth, finishing dinner. You use the completion of that existing habit as the trigger, the cue for the new behavior you want to install.
Okay, can you give the specific example template from the sources? How does that look?
So Instead of a vague goal like, I'll work on my project every day, which relies entirely on you feeling motivated when you wake up.
Which often doesn't happen.
Right. The habit stack is very specific. It follows the formula. After I current habit, I will new habit. So, for instance, after I finish my morning coffee, I will write for 15 minutes.
Ah, okay. So the coffee finishing becomes the automatic trigger. You don't have to decide whether to write or not. The routine dictates it.
Precisely. The new habit essentially gets a free ride on the momentum of the old one. It dramatically reduces the friction of starting.
That 15 minutes seems key too. It's small.
Critically important. You have to start small. If you try to stack after coffee, I'll write 2,000 words, you're setting yourself up to fail. The initial goal of the stack is just initiation. Get started. 15 minutes feels almost too small to skip. And the funny thing is, once you start, you often find you keep going for longer. But the commitment is just those 15 minutes.
What about when things go wrong? Like, what if your morning routine changes or you miss a day? Does the whole system collapse?
Good question. Consistency is key, but life happens. The sources suggest a couple of things. First, maybe have more than one stack, a morning one and an evening one perhaps. Diversify your anchors.
Okay.
Second, build in a backup plan. Use an if-then protocol. If I miss my morning writing session after coffee, then I will do my 15 minutes immediately after I finish lunch. This prevents one slip-up from completely derailing you.
Right, it builds resilience into the system. Okay, so habit stacking gets us doing the work. But where does the time and energy come from? Especially for really demanding goals, deep learning, major creative projects. These things take a lot out of you.
They do. Mm-hmm. And this is where we hit the inevitable clash with, well, the rest of life.
Yeah.
Your job, your family, your health, just basic rest. You simply cannot operate at 100% capacity in all areas simultaneously for extended periods.
And trying to do that is often what leads to burnout, right? People try to add this huge new commitment on top of everything else, and eventually something breaks.
Exactly. This is where the sources introduce the concept of the focus season.
A focus season. Tell me about that.
Okay. Crucially, a focus season is not a permanent lifestyle change. That's key. It's defined as a deliberate, conscious trade-off. It's a temporary, intense period of focus, maybe 3 months, maybe 6, where your primary goal.
Like finishing the manuscript or getting that certification.
Right. That primary goal gets elevated to the absolute top priority, second only to your truly non-negotiable responsibilities like health and core family needs.
The temporary nature seems really important psychologically.
It's everything. Framing it as a season makes the necessary sacrifices feel manageable. You're not telling yourself, I can never relax or see friends again. You're saying, for the next 4 months, my social life might look a bit different, or I'm putting that other hobby on hold for this season.
That requires some serious planning, though, and communication. Who needs to know you're entering a focus season? How do you protect those non-negotiables?
Excellent points. It requires what you might call stakeholder management. Your family, your partner, maybe close friends or even colleagues, depending on the goal they need to know explicitly. You need to communicate that you're entering a time-bound period of intense focus and ideally share the end date. I'm going deep on this project until December 15th. That turns your reduced availability from feeling like neglect into a shared temporary strategy.
So everyone knows it's not forever.
Exactly. And regarding non-negotiables, the sources are very clear. You cannot sacrifice basic health, sleep, decent nutrition, some movement indefinitely, and you can't completely neglect core relationships. That leads to burnout and resentment. The sacrifice has to come from the optional stuff, the middle ground. Less TV, maybe scaling back on a secondary hobby, be more efficient with errands, saying no to lower priority social things. The temporary nature of the season is what gives you permission to make those cuts without feeling overwhelming guilt or depleting yourself completely.
Okay, so we plan the season, communicate it, make temporary sacrifices. Now, let's jump ahead. You've run the focus season, you've finished the project, you've achieved the goal. You cross the finish line. We usually assume that moment publishing the book, getting the degree, landing the client is going to be pure joy, ecstasy, relief, lasting happiness.
Yeah, that's the common assumption. And that very expectation can set us up for a really weird, often unsettling psychological experience. The sources call it the post-goal slump, or sometimes the arrival fallacy.
The arrival fallacy. Okay, what is that?
It's that counterintuitive feeling of emptiness, maybe a lack of identity or directionlessness that can hit you almost immediately after achieving a huge, long thought-after goal.
Emptiness. After finally succeeding, that sounds confusing.
It can be deeply confusing, even a bit scary. You work so hard, maybe for years, for this moment, and instead of euphoria, there's this vacuum. The reason, according to the sources, is that the pursuit itself is gone. The structure, the daily identity, the specific challenge that organized your life and your focus, maybe through habit stacks and focus seasons for months or years, it's suddenly removed.
You've arrived.
And the terrifying question pops up. Okay, I'm here. So now what? Who am I now?
Wow, okay, that sounds rough. How do you know if it's just this normal arrival fallacy slump versus something more serious like actual clinical depression setting in?
That's a really crucial distinction to make. The arrival fallacy is typically tied directly to the loss of that specific structure and the identity wrapped up in the pursuit. It's almost like a predictable grief for the process you just completed. So while it might feel a bit like mild depression, maybe low energy, lack of enthusiasm, it's usually situational. It's linked to the goal completion, and it tends to resolve when a new sense of purpose or a new structure is found.
Okay.
Clinical depression, on the other hand, tends to be more pervasive. It affects all areas of life, often regardless of recent achievements, and might require professional clinical support. The treatment for the arrival fallacy is usually finding a new project or structure. The treatment for depression is different.
So knowing this might happen, what are the mitigation strategies? How do you handle it or even prevent it?
It seems to be a two-pronged approach, really focusing on prevention and planning ahead. The first layer is something we've touched on. Actively cultivate loving the process, not just the outcome.
Right. Find satisfaction in the daily grind.
Exactly. If your only source of satisfaction is tied to that final moment of achievement, you're almost guaranteed to crash afterwards. But if you train yourself to find joy in the daily ritual, the satisfaction of solving a tricky problem, the feeling of flow during creation, the small win of understanding something new, if you genuinely love the work, then the absence of that specific finished goal doesn't remove your daily source of meaning and satisfaction.
Okay, love the process. What's the second layer?
The second layer is planning for the inevitable vacuum. It's psychologically vital, the sources argue, to always have new goals simmering on the back burner.
Simmering, not necessarily starting them right away.
Right. This doesn't mean you can't pause and celebrate your current win. You absolutely should. But having some ideas, some potential next projects, some new skills you're curious about, it ensures your psychological engine doesn't just stall when the current project ends.
So you need that next structural framework, or at least the blueprint for it, kind of ready to go before you even cross the finish line of the current thing.
Yes. Having a potential new direction, a new why waiting in the wings, means you don't suffer that shock of aimlessness as intensely. It allows that forward momentum, that love, the pursuit itself, to pull you naturally into the next phase of learning or creating.
It creates a continuous cycle, preventing any single goal from becoming your entire identity.
Exactly. It fosters long-term, sustained motivation and protects your sense of self-worth from being totally dependent on the latest achievement.
Wow. This has been incredibly thorough, a real deep dive, covering the whole arc from understanding the roots of self-doubt and reframing imposter syndrome, through the practical tactics like the evidence log, separating feelings from facts, finding your why, using better language for the struggle,
to systemizing the effort with habit stacking in the focus season.
and finally, planning for what comes after success, navigating that potential arrival fallacy. It feels like a complete psychological toolkit. The big theme that keeps coming up for me is shifting from fighting yourself emotionally to approaching your experience more like a capable professional, analyzing a challenge that can be understood and managed.
I think that's a great summary.
Having the right concepts, the right language, it really seems to transform the whole demanding journey of learning or creating something significant.
Absolutely. Achieving something big, whether it's mastery in a field or a major creative work, it's just not a straight line. It's messy, it's complex, it's profoundly human. It's full of these cycles of effort, doubt, breakthrough, and more effort. Hopefully having these specific tools and frameworks we've discussed helps you, the listener, embrace that complexity, maybe even find the value in it, rather than just recoiling from the difficulty.
So a final thought to leave our listeners with, perhaps.
Well, if we accept this idea that achievement, even major achievement, is often followed by this need for a new direction, this arrival fallacy. What does that tell us about the real value of learning itself? Maybe the biggest success isn't just reaching that one destination, that single peak. Perhaps the ultimate skill we're developing is mastering the art of beginning again, finding joy in the process, embracing the friction of the next climb.
The skill of beginning again, that's a powerful idea to chew on.
So we encourage you, keep grappling, keep logging that evidence, keep finding your why, keep learning, and just keep moving forward.